Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Allie, and today's video we are talking about horror icons. I actually had no intentions of filming this video or putting this video out. That's also why it is so late. Long story short, last year my bookish Instagram friend Gina posted this horror challenge. It's 12 horror icons for the year. Yes, she did have them by month. So like in January, we're reading a book by Stephen King, and she also has this challenge over on Storygraph. Loved the idea so much. Honestly, I just had planned on joining the challenge because at the time I was joining challenges from book clubs and stuff like that as well, but I was like, this is such a cool challenge. I want to stick with it throughout the year. There's names here that I've never read from before. There's authors here that I do love, and I want to read more of their work, and I love a good reading challenge. So the past year, 2025, I really tried my hardest to complete this. I didn't stay true to the month and the author of that month, and I did see that she posted something about like, don't worry if it's not like in that month, just, you know, take it off by like the end of the year or whatever. So that's kind of where I went. I can never plan when it comes to certain things like this. I don't know. When it comes to reading challenges, I guess I am just more of a mood reader and I fit it in when I can. But with that being said, I wrapped the end of the year completing all 12 besides, I'm pretty sure, 2 of them. And I even talked about it in my cramming video. It was like my end of the year cramming vlog. I think I ended up fitting 1 more into that, and I was just like, I'm not completing the challenge, but it is what it is. I am gonna roll it over into my new year and try to complete the last 2. And it was in that moment that I was like, yeah, and then I could do a recap video. And that's what this is. I don't know, I love a good recap video, and I feel like I've been doing this a lot here lately. I start a video months prior before it actually ends up on my channel. So it's kind of like going back in time, and even in editing and everything, like seeing myself back in time up into this point and completing what I originally set out to do, even though it is months later, and sometimes life happens that way. I am going to have Gina tagged below. Her Instagram is Ghoulish Gina, and I say that because you should definitely check her out for her fun content in general, but also she is a bookish girl who is always posting good recs. This year, instead of 12 horror icons, we're doing 12 women of horror, and this is the new spread. So I don't know, maybe a video next year, or possibly the end of this year, of me completing the challenge for this year. Although I did not read this challenge in order, I'm going to be showing you guys it in order. Starting with January's pick, which is Stephen King, who you guys know I love Stephen King. Huge fan. I have so many of his books, and I'm just always excited to tick another one off the list because I really want to get through all of his work. That is definitely a huge bookish goal of mine, and just so happened to be my very first book of 2025. I read The Eyes of the Dragon. The nice part about not having this idea in mind, but still having footage to fall back on, was the majority of these I read for other reasons. The Eyes of the Dragon I read for a video concept idea about eyeballs. So it's nice to be able to go back and grab clips from said videos to show you guys my reviews. And yeah, and this one, it was for that video. My fantasy reading has definitely come a long way since then. I kind of talked about how I was not a fantasy reader. I am really happy to announce that this book, honestly, I think kind of like jump-started my fantasy read, because last year I read more fantasy from Stephen King, like fairy tale. And besides that, I just dabbled in a lot more, and now in 2026, I am currently reading more fantasy books. So I don't know, I kind of feel like that's a props to Stephen King and The Eyes of the Dragon, because after reading that, I was like, I want to read more books like this. Book of the new year was the eyes of the dragon. And this is such a weird pick to throw in this video because it's fantasy and there's a dragon and there's a kingdom. This follows a kingdom where the king is murdered. And we learn, not only is it kind of like an adventure, like fantasy, words with this. I'm not a fantasy reader, so let me just be clear with that. But I do love Stephen King. This follows a kingdom. We get to know the kingdom. We get to know the king, his princes, and the people who work for them, the like magician of the castle flag. And the king, Roland, is murdered. And it is being pinned on the oldest son who would take the throne, Peter. And although he has continued to say that he is innocent, Flag and other people are suspecting him, and even the ones that you would think wouldn't suspect him, there's too much evidence that has been pitted against him that makes him look guilty. So unfortunately, he is imprisoned, and the younger brother takes over the kingdom, and it does not go well. It is a really fun time. I do feel like it's not as adventure as you would think, because most of the book is just in this castle and is about this character who is imprisoned and how he is being treated and how he is trying to, still years later, trying to show his innocence. And like I said, there is some like brutal, like body horror moments with like punishment and stuff like that in this, to people who disrespect, like, you know, the throne or the prisoners of this castle. But besides that, it was kind of just like a slow burn fantasy kingdom read. What I did really like about this, though, because I did land at a 4-star, it's not a perfect 5 for me, but what I did like about this is that it is part of my like Dark Tower expanded series, and we have name mentions like Roland and Flag, and nothing that I'm going to spoil, but definitely some names. And what I've read about this is that it could be kind of like a prequel to, or that might have been like what Stephen King was going for with this one. I kind of want to look it up, and maybe in my Dark Tower video let you guys know whenever that finally comes out. But I'm wondering if this one was written before The Gunslinger, the first in that series, and maybe like the idea was sparked from this and he wanted to carry on with like these names and the idea of it, or if this came afterwards. And I think this was like more so like a prequel moment where he had another idea to play with. And the king also is poisoned by this like type of powder that comes from dragon, so that's the play like with the dragon. But definitely a fun lighter side fantasy that I enjoyed, which is saying a lot since I don't read fantasy a whole lot. But this was more my type of fantasy, and I did enjoy my time with it. Next up, we have Shirley Jackson, and I have a love-hate relationship with Shirley Jackson's work. Obviously, I love the iconic The Haunting of Hill House, but with that being said, I actually prefer Mike Flanagan's Netflix like miniseries over the book 10,000 folds. Like, that show is one of my top favorite shows. I love it so much. I love the concept and the idea of it so much more than the original book. But I have dabbled in a little bit more of Shirley Jackson's work, like The Lottery, which I love. I tried another one of hers, and I can't even off the top of my head think of what it was, and I just was not a fan. And it kind of made me uneasy about filling this prompt and reading another one from her. So with that being said, I picked up The Witchcraft of Salem Village because I was like, I love witches, witchcraft, all of that. And I love reading and learning more about witch trials from Salem and all of that. So I was like, this is just going to be a great pick for me. This is marked in genres as nonfiction, history, witches, horror, historical, classics, and that's really what this is. This was one of my picks that I read on my own time. I didn't really have a video concept for it. I'm pretty sure I didn't mention it in any type of video that I can think of off the top of my head. This is a detailed account of one of the strangest and most shocking episodes in American history. Stories of magic, superstition, and witchcraft were strictly forbidden in the little town of Salem Village. But a group of young girls ignored these rules, spellbound by the tales told by a woman named Tibtuba. I can't think of how you pronounce her name. When questioned about their activities, the terrified girls set off a whirlwind of controversy as they accused townsperson after townsperson of being witches. It says that this examines in careful detail the horrifying true story of accusations, trials, and executions that shook a community to its foundations. And that's what it is. Like, it's the accusations, it's these innocent people going up on trial, and even the executions. It's very brutal and just very blunt laid out for you, but nonetheless, it was a great history read. I really love the way Shirley Jackson told the story, and I'm finding it really hard right now to say I had a good time with it because it's such a brutal and just such a sad part of history, but it was a very interesting read, and I gave it 5 stars. Next up, we have The Color Out of Space by H.P. Lovecraft. Very controversial person. I definitely need to do more of my research in that department. I have one of his short story collections. Honestly, it was a cover buy because it had the painting of the monster on it, and I was like, I love it. It's one of my favorite paintings, if not my favorite. But it's a short story collection. I definitely had planned or had the goal in mind to read it, but unfortunately kind of ran out of time towards the end of my year, so I did decide to go with The Color Out of Space. This was also because I am currently, then and now, like I said, a video that I've been filming for months, my take on an alien vlog, if you will, and I read it for that. I also want to mention here before we jump into the clip that I read this particular story after The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, so that's why there is a slight mention of that in the beginning. I'm back briefly for this video to let you know that I have finished another story. It was another short one, classic, that read pretty quickly. So kind of feel like a broken record here because I feel like I could just say ditto to everything I said about H.G. Wells' story, because this is another classic that I feel like was written well before its time in a sense of what was described and told in this story. I'm talking about The Color Out of Space. I was able to get an audiobook through my library of this. This is by H.P. Lovecraft. It was a monstrous constellation of unnatural light, like a glutted swarm of corpse-fed fireflies dancing hellish sarabands over an accursed marsh. I feel like this one having a little bit more of like a horror element than just the sci-fi alien vibe, of people kind of like losing their minds and even dying. This is more of like a meteorite that hits Earth. Instead of like an almost alien vibe, it's almost just like this type of entity thing that is kind of poisoning everything, if you will. The descriptions of this were frightening, but also stunning. I have not really read H.P. Lovecraft, so I don't really know what to expect with a lot of his other work, but I found this to be very interesting. I feel like there was definitely moments that would kind of lose me a little bit, and then I would have to jump back into it, which I feel like is very common with certain classics, so I don't think that his writing style would be really an all-time favorite for me. I definitely would prefer exploring it a little bit more, but I don't know, I just found the way this story was told in almost like an outer space hitting Earth moment to be really cool. Definitely a classic you should check out if you're into any type of like space related things landing on Earth, or, and again, I don't really know if I could really say that this is an alien story as much as it is just something evil from outer space. And I think that there's still something there to appreciate with going into books that have alien themes. Yeah, I landed at a 4-star. Not only is it another horror icon classic to check off my list. Next up, we have Edgar Allan Poe. And if you've been around on my channel, you know that I have quite a bit of Edgar Allan Poe content. I'm actually going to link my playlist up above for you guys to check it out, in case you are wondering about any of his other works and what I thought of them. I have officially, as of the end of 2025, I've completed all of Edgar Allan Poe's work. It was definitely a bookish goal of mine that I worked on for a few years, and towards the end, it really, really dragged on. I had a phenomenal time with his horror work, but definitely the lackluster of his satire and fantasy and other works really held me back in completing that goal. And yeah, I finally made it. I honestly chose at random which one I wanted for this because I read so many of his last year as well. But I went with the Sphinx because this was one at the time that I was like, I can put this one down in my journal. And thankfully it happened to be a higher rated story of his for me, but definitely not like my all-time favorite. It was a part of my vlog where I was reading his satire work and trying to decipher if Edgar Allan Poe is a funny guy or not, and I had a really rough time with that video. This short story happened to be one of the best. Sphinx. And it is officially thundering. Since I've left you guys, we've had bad weather again. And now we're kind of like in a flood warning. Hopefully our area doesn't get too flooded, but yeah, it's just been tornadoes and now flood and a crazy spring, let me tell you. The Sphinx is a short story about a man who decides to visit a relative living near the Hudson River north of New York City for 2 weeks. And during this, there is an epidemic in the city. An outbreak occurred during the summer of 1832, and one day during this visit, the man is reading a book near the window overlooking a scenic view of the Hudson River. His attention is focused upon, while like pondering about this epidemic, he is looking at this view and he spots this creature over the hill. It is described as an enormous creature larger than any ocean-going ship, and it is climbing down this like embankment. This one I had a lot more fun with it because we kind of have like this creature feature going on and him like describing it and stuff. Again, it felt less in the humor side of things and more horror, although it's not scary. It's just interesting, sci-fi, if you will. I think I would give this one 4 stars because it was the first one that really like grabbed my attention, just about out of all of these, and I really stuck with it the entire time. I didn't feel like overly confused as to what was going on. It was interesting and also like incredibly short, so it wasn't like just boring and dragging on. Bram Stoker is, I feel like, a name that I would put up there with one of my favorite authors just because of my love for Dracula and my rereads of Dracula. I am rereading Dracula for a vlog for this year that you guys will see at some point, but that is the only story from Bram Stoker I've ever read, so I was really excited to try some of his other work, and I went with The Judge's House. I had seen really good reviews on it, and the synopsis alone made me really excited to pick it up. But it definitely was one of my end of the year reads. I threw this in my cramming vlog because I really wanted to fit in another iconic horror author off the challenge before the new year. I jumped straight into The Judge's House. I do not have a physical copy of this, so I will throw it up for you guys. I did read this via audio, It was incredible. This is by Bram Stoker, and this is for my 12 horror icons. Running up on the end of the year and not knowing how to fill these prompts and knowing that I won't be able to accomplish them, I was hoping to at least get in maybe 1 or 2 more. So I thought that this one would be perfect. I am rereading Dracula very, very soon. So I didn't want to really read that, or I think there's like a continuation Dracula story. Instead, I decided to try out something I've never read from Bram Stoker before, and that is The Judge's House. The synopsis on Goodreads says, a scholar takes up residence in the former home of a judge with a very evil reputation. He finds the place infested with rats, but it suits his purposes until one of the rats grows too bold and the scholar realizes the horror he stumbled into. I loved this. Like, the writing and everything, and it really just felt like a cross between Bram Stoker. Like, some of the writing feeling was there from Dracula, but it also reminded me of just like this eerie, ominous Edgar Allan Poe story, and I loved it. The build-up, the anticipation, the eeriness of like what's going on, and you have like the confused, almost unreliable narrator of this person that's taking up residence in this house, and just, you know, it's your typical like haunted house ghost story, but he is questioning people and he's getting like little tidbits here and there about like, oh, you live there, and you know, that type of ordeal, kind of building up to the overall like shock factor. And what an ending. I loved it. I'm landing at a 5-star. It is a short story, so I wanted to keep it very short and sweet and not spoil anything. I feel like the general idea is out there. You just have to go in for the fun part of the experience and Bram Stoker's take on a ghost story. I had a really great time with it though. I'm also really stoked to have another iconic horror author checked off the list, so that when I do cramming at the beginning of the year to finish up any goals that I'm wanting to, I won't have as many. When I think about classics and H.G. Wells, I just am always thinking about the War of the Worlds. I constantly see it, and so it was definitely a classic that I wanted to get to, and that is why I chose it. But it also is a part of my alien vlog I've been working on, and I had quite the time with it. It has been a minute since I've checked in with you guys. Not only have I finished another book for this video, but I am sick, so I'm gonna try to review this. I'm a little bit like foggy in the brain right now, and I might sound horrible, and I really, really apologize. I will try to edit out any sniffling and stuff like that. I'm just kind of at the tail end of it, so it's just like drainage, and I just sound rough. Since I left you guys though, I was just going to start The War of the Worlds. This is by H.G. Wells. I originally planned on sitting down and starting this last night so that I could check in with you guys and be like, I am doing something with this video. And then I sat down and I read this in one sitting. Like, I couldn't put it down. I did have the audio through my library Hoopla, because I was doing like laundry, so whenever I got up I would switch to the audio and go and fold a load of laundry or something like that, and then I would come right back to this. But it is, I believe, right under 300 pages. No, it's under 200 pages. I don't know why. Again, the brain fog. Yeah, it's right under 200 pages, and it just reads very quickly, but I love how this is sectioned off, and this is obviously a library copy. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I get like a classic that looks like this from my library, I just feel like Belle from Beauty and the Beast. Like, look at me. First published in 1898. Don't think I've ever read anything from H.G. Wells. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, and with the book being written this long ago, you definitely don't know what you're getting into. You don't know like how the writing's going to be, and there is times in this where it is a little bit slower and some of the sentences going together, I'm like, wait, what? Like, what does that mean? But for the most part, I will say this was pretty cut
clear like throughout. It felt not as aged as it actually is. And I really enjoyed that. And I feel like it's so ahead of its time when it comes to like an alien invasion, because that's literally what this is about. It's sectioned into different books, and then obviously chapters, but I love that the chapters are actually named about like what is going on, like the eve of the war, the falling star, on Horsell Common, the cylinder opens, the heat ray, and it just goes on, like how I reached home, Friday night, the fighting begins, in the storm. Like, it really just paints the picture and lays it all out from like how things were before this happened, what happened that caused it, this like falling star, which we get in a lot of books and movies and stuff. And I feel like it's props to H.G. Wells for that. This literally says, Hubert George Wells was born in Bromley, Kent, where his father kept a store and his mother was a maid. He served as a draper's apprentice and a chemist assistant before attending Midhurst Grammar School. Upon graduation, he worked in a London dry goods firm. A scholarship enabled him to attend the Royal College of Science, where he studied under T.H. Huxley. After receiving his degree, he taught science until tuberculosis forced him to retire from active life for several years, and he started to write. In 1891, the Fortnightly Review published one of his essays, and he began his long and prolific literary career. His many novels include science fiction, The Time Machine, The War of the Worlds, and The First Men in the Moon. I think it might have been on Goodreads. For countless centuries, Mars has been the star of war. The night after a shooting star is seen streaking through the sky from Mars, a cylinder is discovered on Horsell Common near London. At first, native locals approach the cylinder armed just with a white flag, only to be quickly killed by an all-destroying heat ray as terrifying tentacled invaders emerge. Soon, the whole of human civilization is under threat as powerful Martians build gigantic killing machines, destroy all in their path with black gas and burning rays, and feast on the warm blood of trapped, still living human prey. The forces of the earth, however, may prove harder to beat than they first appear. The first modern tale of alien invasion, The War of the Worlds, remains one of the most influential of the science fiction works. But I had read somewhere where like he is pretty much like what Edgar Allan Poe was for like melancholy horror. He is what like the first steps into the science fiction genre and like what started it, like the grandfather of science fiction. And I absolutely love that because you really got that throughout this book. I personally really loved the whole beginning, the aspect of like what people on the world would do if something like this was to happen and like their first reactions to things, and obviously not being incredibly smart about it. I think nowadays there would be a lot more people, I feel like it'd be more 50-50, like there'd be a lot of people that would be a lot more smart about it and keep their distance, where there would be a lot of people that were also just like curious and like, I mean nowadays it's like for the views, but like this being written back in the time that it is and how people didn't really have technology or different things to really use to figure out like what was going on or anything, but also knowing that like this was already in people's minds back then is so crazy too, which obviously I guess it would be. There's different planets and you always are going to wonder if there's other life forms out there. But I don't know, it just seems like something that would be so much more like satire and taboo for that time. We follow this guy who is going through the motions of everything. He is somebody who can get away. He's seeing things happening from afar. He is trying to get to like his family, and ultimately like it really goes into the whole aspect, not just the invasion, but like what happens when these tentacled alien beings take over and imprison humans and what that looks like, and also really goes into like the machinery and stuff that they have, which I'm sure at its time was just like, wow, like this is incredible. He really paints the picture. I had an awesome time with this one. But with that being said, this doesn't feel like a perfect 5-star. I feel like for its time, it's so ahead of its time, and it's a really fun, fast-paced one to pick up and read, especially if you like alien books. I'm glad that since it's like the first of its kind, I was able to pick it up and read it. I think I'm landing at more of a 4-star. I really, really liked it. It doesn't just scream 5-star like all-time favorite for me. I feel like with classics, to get a 5-star, it's gonna be more so like horror classics that are just, you know, my taste, if you will. Definitely better than the Tommyknockers. And that's saying something because I love Stephen King. But yeah, I'm really glad that I got to this. And I'm not gonna lie, there is different covers of this book. I will throw up for you guys, but like whenever, I don't know if it's just like the modern like monster romance aspect of things or what, but when I hear like alien tentacle beings, I'm thinking more like Davy Jones or like, I don't know, like some type of other tentacled being. I'm not thinking about like these mechanical beings, which I guess not all the covers look like mechanical ones, but they almost look like Dr. Octopus like grabbers, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I just didn't picture what's on the cover of these books. I pictured something very different, but again, I think it's the monster romance in my head.
Clive Barker was one of the authors that I hadn't read from before, didn't really know much about his work like I am starting to find out now. But he was one of the ones that I went to the library. I think there was 3 authors I had in mind. It was Clive Barker, Peter Straub, and Junji Ito. I went to my library and I'm like, I'm just gonna see what they have. I don't know what I want to read from any of these authors, but I'm just gonna see what they have and I'm gonna grab it. And that's how I stumbled across Mr. Be Gone, and it was definitely an unpopular opinion, that's for sure, but a rather great time. I think I'm in the minority here because I liked this. I believe this was mid-year, like maybe like July's pick. Clive Barker, I know of Clive Barker. He's very iconic. He is the writer and the mind behind Pinhead and Hellraiser, as well as many more things. I just recently seen an Instagram live from Grady Hendrix, who I absolutely adore, in the horror realm of writing, and he wrote like the foreword for the newest edition on one of Clive Barker's books, and I definitely want to get to that. But not just that, he had on so many authors that talked about Clive Barker's work, and it just, oh my gosh, I was like, add to TBR, add to TBR, add to TBR, because I just want to dive more into Clive Barker's work and definitely will in the new year. With that being said, where to start? I had no idea. This was one of the books that like I just went to the library and was like, let's see what they have under Clive Barker. And I think there was 2. And I read the synopsis and I was just sold on this one. Reader, beware, evil lies within. Mr. Be Gone marks the long-awaited return of Clive Barker, the great master of the macabre and the classic horror story. All of these books that he wrote, apparently, I don't know all of the lore, but I do know that he wrote a lot of just amazing horror books and took a break because he was writing screenplays and different things like that. So he came back with Mr. Be Gone in 2007. This bone-chilling novel in which a medieval devil speaks directly to his reader, his tone murderous one moment, seductive the next, is a never-before-published memoir allegedly penned in the year 1438. The demon has embedded himself in the very words of this tale of terror, turning the book into itself into a dangerous object laced with menace only too ready to break free and exert its power. This is a horror supernatural moment going on with this devil who is trapped inside the pages of this literal book. This gave me, and I'm so sorry if you don't like this reference, but I feel like it just needs to be said because it was the vibes I got. But this almost reminded me of speaking like Harry Potter, speaking through the journal and the Chamber of Secrets to Tom Riddle. it is that vibe. Like, that's what it feels like. Although, like, we're not writing back to him, he is demanding us close this book, burn it. I'm tired. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And then, like it says, one moment he's threatening us. He's calling us names. He's belittling us. And then the next second he's very like, I'm sorry. I know you just want my story. You know, I'll just give it to you. It is what it is. Like, don't worry about it. But like, then, you know, you can burn the book, right? You know? And so it's almost like going through all the emotions of like sadness and then rage and then like, maybe I can be convincing and conniving to get them to do this. But I don't know, I just really, really enjoyed it. I have a thing for books that are written letter style, like letters to each other. And this one felt like a letter to me. And like, that just whole vibe was just so cool. I can understand where people are just like, oh my God, the repetitiveness of this, it's so annoying. Like, this is not what I expected or what I wanted, and I was just ready for it to end. But for me, I rather enjoyed myself with it. I did also have the audiobook through Hoopla, so I feel like that helped in a way of like, it not feeling as repetitive, like we could get through those moments a little bit quicker than physically reading. But at the same time, I think the portions that I did read physically, I just really enjoyed my time with it. Like, I don't know what's wrong about this. Also moments of like horrifying, like terror of kind of like looking over your shoulder when he's literally saying like, I'm with you now. I'm inching up closer and closer to you. I'm right behind you. I'm literally going to slash your throat. And it's like, oh my God, like, you know, like I loved that vibe to it. It was just such a creepy little book. And I feel like it's not that long that it could be like a one setting, which is practically what I did. And I loved it. But this also is a story within a story. So although he's threatening us and telling us to burn it, he's also like, fine, I'll give you some more lore. You're curious, you're human, I get it. Like, this is my story. And it starts with him as a boy trying to escape his horrible father. And we learn that he is living in the 9th level of hell. And he's just a demon boy. God, taking me back to my K-pop demon hunter video. While escaping and his father chasing him, they are both captured by this net type a device, kind of like, you know, when you go fishing and you throw the net and you catch a bunch, it's that vibe. And they're being reeled up, captured by humans. And this was probably my favorite part of the entire book, because as they are being reeled up, they're literally going through each level. And just like, I wish that there was a little bit more description there. But I loved what we did get, because this kid is so curious too. And it's just like, oh wow, like that's what level 7 looks like. That's what level 6 looks like. Like, I love that. Like, I really wish that we got to spend more time during that. But obviously, you know, this kid's still trying to escape his father, even though they are being captured. He's like, I still don't want you going with me. Meow. He's meowing. What? You just want to be in the video? Yeah. I did like getting a story. Yes, there was some parts that like we would jump back to him threatening us or like, you know, whatever. And I liked that, because I was like, oh, thank God, like this last part was kind of boring, kind of dragged on. There was also some questionable things, sexual things that I could have also done without. But yeah, it goes into his life on Earth and dealing with humans and how they treated him and how he treated them and like what he had to do and how he, in the end, eventually became trapped in a book that he now wants us to burn, because he does not want to mindlessly be trapped in this book for the next reader. It's such a fun time. And if this is the introduction to Clive Barker and everybody is saying all of his other stuff is 10 times better, I'm stoked for the new year and my reads with him. Definitely an iconic author. I cannot wait to read more from them. I did, however, land at a 4-star with this. It was not a perfect 5 for me. Like I said, there was moments that were a little too much. I was ready for them to wrap up, as well as bits I didn't really care for. But with that being said, overall, I had a great time, and there was so much of the story that I really liked. And I just felt like it was a fresh read for me. Like, it felt very fresh, unique, and different. And I loved that aspect of the way that this was written. My love for Tananarive Due has definitely grown over the past year. I am still super excited to get to some more of her works. But I actually picked up the Between, which is her debut novel, for the I Love Black Horror readathon last year, and I was super stoked that I finally got to it. If you followed me for a little while, you would know that I have read from her in short story collections and this type of works. And I've always really enjoyed her stories in the short story collections or anthologies, but I have still yet to get to one of her actual novels. I picked this one up from my library, and I believe it's one of her first ones. Don't quote me on that. I don't know all of her books very well, but I am so excited to explore more of her work and to give it a go, especially for I Love Black Horror readathon. She seems like such a genuine person and such a beautiful soul. This one is from 2005. When Hilton was just a boy, his aged grandmother saved him from drowning by pulling him out of a treacherous ocean current, sacrificing her life for his. Oh my God. Now, 30 years later, Hilton begins to think of his borrowed time is running out. His wife, the only elected African-American judge in Dade County, Florida, has begun receiving racist hate mail from a man she once prosecuted. And Hilton's sleep is plagued by nightmares more horrible than any he has ever experienced, as he battles both the psychotic stalking of his family and the unseen enemy that haunts his sleep. Hilton's sense of reality is slipping away. I was correct. Other people are leaving reviews saying that this is her debut novel. So I'm so excited to start with this one. I see a lot of Goodreads friends giving it 5 stars. So that is encouraging and great. I am going to go ahead and start this one, and I will check in and let you guys know how I'm feeling or what I think of it if I finish, because it is a rather shorter one. I feel like it's average length, but I think just right over 300 pages, so pretty quick. I am now over halfway through the Between, and I want to talk about how I am feeling about it. I'm at chapter 25, and it's in part 3. Of the book, and I honestly didn't know what to expect with this. I looked at some different reviews, like non-spoiler ones, and everybody just saying like, oh my gosh, like the first like 25% is just kind of like, it's not really going anywhere. It's kind of hard to stay entertained with it, and then it just picks up, and it has. I agree with that completely, although I didn't mind the first part of it. We meet Hilton, I believe is his name. I am mainly listening to the audiobook for this one. It's just been a busy weekend. Today is the first day where I'm actually able to sit down and like physically read. So yeah, this past weekend was definitely a lot of the audiobook, which is, the narration is great. Yeah, we follow Hilton. He is a father, he is a husband, and he is going through a lot in his life, and he keeps having these like intense dreams of stuff happening to his loved ones. When he was younger, his grandmother died, and it's like it saved his life. And so he has moments of thinking back to that, and then it's like it goes from like those moments to then just like the most intense, unhinged, gory scenes that are just written in phenomenal horror. Like, it's just everything. I feel like there is this character building where like, yes, this character is flawed, and I do like those aspects of it. I'm not looking for like perfect characters, but there is a sense of a story that I want more from it, or I wish it was different in certain aspects, and that's where this is falling a little bit for me. I'm hoping by the end it'll be more out of 5 than it is right now. I feel like right now I'm still kind of setting at like a 4, but when those horror unhinged moments happen, like my jaw's on the floor and I'm like, this could be a 5-star. Like she just writes it so well. And if anything, this being her debut, it makes me so excited to pick up more of her books now and to finally get to them. But yeah, I'm still enjoying it. I kind of want to finish. It's reading, although it has the horror bits to it, it's obviously a horror book. It has this pacing now that it's picked up more like a thriller, and it's almost kind of like a psychological thriller horror, but because it is a thriller, it's one of those where it's like, I don't want to give too much away. I feel like it's hard to review it without spoilers, because if you haven't got to this one yet, I don't want to spoil that experience for you, because again, it's just been so jarring at times and I'm really enjoying it. Okay, first of all, I have finished The Between by Tananarive Due, and I'm so torn, you guys. And it's also so hard to talk about, choked up for a minute. It's so hard to talk about why I'm landing at a 4 over a 5-star with this. There is a certain, sorry, I'm like right here by the window and it's so distracting every time a car drives by. Anyways, it is really hard to navigate. There's a certain plot twist, if you will. I mean, it is. It's just, I don't want to give anything away with it. There's a certain reveal that I think is, on one hand, is really, really cool. But because of the last time I checked in with you guys to now, my thoughts on it kind of teetered off a little bit. Only because, and I know I read the synopsis earlier in the video, but Hilton's wife, so the main character's wife, is the only elected African-American judge in Dade County, Florida. They start receiving racist, like, hate mail, but like targeting them. Just saying awful slurs and like that they're going to get their kids and stuff like that, like just awful, awful things. And at first it was just like, I think it might have been like an email or something like that first. I can't even remember now, but like the second time it was like something put in the mailbox. And so it was like, now they know where we live. Like this isn't even like, I don't even think it was like mailed to them. Like it was just placed in their mailbox. And meanwhile, Hilton, he is still going through these like psychological mind games with himself where like he keeps falling asleep and having these bizarre, like almost like vision and like in a different realm that he's calling like the between state that he is dealing with. And it's just a lot to unpack. And I would say the first 50%, I was really intrigued. And then 50% to 75%, I was kind of like, what's going on? Like, I just kind of wanted to know a little bit more, and I felt like it was dragging a little bit. And this whole like hate mail thing had kind of slowed down a little bit too. So I was just like, I need something back. And then the reveal, and I just was left a little, I don't know. It's so hard because I think it's really cool. I feel like it's a really good subject to bring up, to talk about, and to do that in a horror sense is really cool. But at the same time, I kind of wanted it to be something different, something more like off the wall, if you will. So I am landing at a 4-star with it. I still had a great time with it, and I will be picking up more from Tananarive Due. Like I said earlier, I went to my library and seen what there was to offer from Junji Ito. Not only did I read the pick that I ended up using for this challenge, but I did read a couple others from him this past year, and I am excited to get to more of his. I am a huge fan of graphic novels and manga in general, so I know that he's going to be a repeated author that I pick up. I found this one refreshing in this challenge, having so many classic authors and then kind of sprinkle in some newer faces like Tananarive Due and Victor LaValle. But I mean, newish, I'm talking like, I like that there was such a sprinkle from like authors from like the 70s and 80s, and then more like 2000s, like Tananarive Due, who is, obviously still writing. and Victor LaValle, but also like we have older authors like Bram Stoker and Shirley Jackson, where I don't know, it was just kind of like a refreshing moment to be able to pick up a graphic novel manga from Junji Ito. And I ended up for this challenge choosing the Frankenstein plus other short stories. It was kind of a big spiel that we'll get into in a minute. Honestly, I was working on my Frankenstein vlog and I had seen the cover of Junji Ito's Frankenstein and was like, I've got to read it. So that's why I chose it. I have also been making my way through Frankenstein by Junji Ito, and listen, this is the brain fog for like around the holidays, because clearly it says story collection right there, you know? Also says story collection on the spine. This is a beautiful copy from my library, but yeah, I think I just seen Frankenstein, this stunning cover, and Junji Ito meets Mary Shelley on the back, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to have this. And really, the first, like, good chunk of this book is like almost half, if not half of this is a retelling, almost play-by-play of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, plus some other things that were thrown into it. Honestly, not to spoil the new Frankenstein movie, but this was almost like spot on to like a lot of that movie. There's definitely other aspects and like side plot moments going on in this one and that one. The illustration and everything, as always, is incredible. Honestly, if it was just this, 5 stars, because I mean, it's Frankenstein. But the rest of this is short stories that I am making my way through right now, and so far they have just been so disturbing and interesting, but also kind of just a little out of place with this, and wondering why this was made into a short story collection. The first one, Next Spectre, I was literally like, and they all follow the same boy is what I'm gathering. And there's like different there's like a multiverse. So like there's different universes and he's seeing himself in different universes, and some of him are evil and some of them are not. It's a little confusing and a little all over the place. I am enjoying it, but I don't think it's a perfect 5 for me. Next Spectre is literally about him offing a friend and burying them, and then they're haunting him and their neck is growing like crazy. And I'm going to be super vague here because these are short stories. There's much more to the story, but I'm just giving you guys just something from it to let you understand like they're weird. Bog of Living Spirits is about this bog that there's just like this urban myth and legend about like the bog taking people and people disappearing in the bog, and it goes very dark. I think all of these go dark. Hopefully I'm not skipping any. Intruder is about like his house, and I believe this one was about like his house and how there's like portals to the different dimensions, and he is seeing like himself from that, and it's like the evil self. It also like plays into like the past stories. Honestly, the more I'm thinking about the stories I've read so far, I'm like, they're actually really freaking cool and interesting. So I don't know why I'm teetering more to a 4-star with it. I don't know. Maybe the last few stories will like really wow me and change my mind on that. But I think that there's just something about the writing and sometimes like how abrupt the endings can kind of be that I kind of want more from them. The Strange Tale of Oshikiri, if I'm saying that correctly. This one, him seeing this like classmate of his and her kind of being very distraught, and she's running from him, and then all of a sudden she disappears. And then him seeing her at school and she's just acting completely normal and coming to terms with the fact that there is these different dimensions and different versions of himself, but also everyone else. And in some of them are corrupt or evil, and some of them are even dead. Like, it's very eerie. Each one of these stories is completely different, yet intertwined somehow. I think I have one or two. Yeah. The Strange Tale of Oshikiri, The Walls, and Face Firmly in Place, I think are my last two. But yeah, they've just been very disturbing imagery, very disturbing stories. I like the strange and unusual stories though, so I do really enjoy it. But with these, there is just something so abrupt about them that I think is just making me think, yeah, this is a great time, but not like an all-time favorite, I guess. But anyways, I'm going to keep reading, and I will check back in to wrap up this.
Please do not mind my surrounding area. My bed is not made. It is what it is, and my son is currently in the shower, so if you hear the shower, that's why. With that being said, I'm landing at a 4-star with this. The last couple of stories continue to just be very weird, depressing. It continued on with this different, like, multiverse and these same characters but in different lives, and kind of worlds colliding sometimes with like slips in the dimension, and then you have these people who are seeing them other selves do horrific things and almost like battling with themselves. I don't know, I liked it. I enjoyed the weirdness, I enjoyed the strangeness, and I feel like that's been a repeating element of his. I just find some of his work to be a little young, almost like a YA, which this does say teen from my library, so that's probably why as well. But I've really enjoyed his work so far that I've read, and will continue to pick up some more to explore more of his work. I don't know, I'm just not at a perfect 5. Again, I feel like if this was just the Frankenstein retelling, it would have been a 5. But the other ones, there was so much I liked about them, but I also just felt like there was so much that was left out from each short story that it kind of, each one left me wanting more, wanting to know what was the reason of this, or what would have happened if the story continued. Yeah, they're just kind of abrupt, and sometimes like it feels like a slower pace, and then the ending is so rushed, and I usually hate that. So yeah, I am landing at a 4-star with Frankenstein by Junji Ito. I believe all of his that I've read so far, which have only been a couple, I've landed, I think, at 4-star if I'm not mistaken. You will have to let me know your recommendation in the comments so that I can read some more.
Pick from the library. At the time I went in, and I'm not even sure if I grabbed any on Peter Straub. I did see a couple of picks, and I ended up having to request this one because it had a foreword from Stephen King, so I wanted to get this edition. I'm going to be completely honest, I haven't even read the foreword. I might, or like the introduction from Stephen King, I might before I take it back to my library, but I was able to get the audiobook, and since this is such a beefy read, I definitely wanted the audiobook for it. This was definitely one of the reads that didn't make it into my 2025, so it was a 2026 read, but for, you know, the previous year's challenge. I was also excited to finally get to Peter Straub to see his work. I am going to be attempting to read the trilogy that he wrote with Stephen King this year, since Stephen King is finally getting to the 3rd book in it, and I'm super stoked for that. But I had never tried a Peter Straub. I did not know what I was getting myself into, and I had a rather hard time with this one. I think my reading was just kind of hitting a little bit of a slump, and it was just a very long, slow burn for me. In a seedy motel in Florida, a young man holds captive a little girl in a spoiled pink dress. He is anxious, tormented, introspective. She is calm, passive, strangely detached. She says her name is Angie Mall. In a small upstate town, four old friends meet to honor the traditions of the Chowder Society. They drink good whiskey and trade ghost stories. As chilling as these tales are and as strangely prophetic, they pale before the horrific nightmares that began a year ago when one of their members attended a party for a visiting actress and there died of a heart attack. Or was it fright? Ask the actress. She says her name is Anne Veronica Moore. In California, a talented young novelist teaching creative writing at Berkeley finds himself hopelessly obsessed with one of his students. She is exquisitely lovely, infernally elusive. She says her name is Alma Mobley. What is the connection between these places, these people, these agonizing events? For four men in Millburn, New York, an act inadvertently carried out and their youth has come back to haunt them. Now they are about to learn what happens to those who believe they can bury the past and get away with murder. I felt like this was just a slow burn horror story. It had so many characters and so many elements that I found my head spinning a little bit trying to keep up. Some of it I found quite entertaining, and when it comes down to his actual like ghost and paranormal and horror writing, I rather enjoyed it. When it comes to these slow burn conversations between characters that I just really didn't care about, it was not for me. I think overall, like what he was attempting to do here was very interesting and overall makes a good ghost story, but I do feel like, in a sense, like Stephen King, we could have had less rambling and more action, more eerie moments that could fill these pages and make it a lot more entertaining than what we did get. I honestly feel like it's going to be one that is a little bit more forgettable for me, and I hate that. But I would definitely pick up more from Peter Straub in the future. I want to say my library had one of his, is it called like The Throat? Please let me know if you've read that. Is it worth it? That is such a long book. And I feel like if it's along this like slow burn horror, I don't know if it's going to be for me or not. But I am still really excited to get to, I think it's The Talisman. Am I correct on that? I don't know why I get, since I haven't read either one of them, Insomnia and The Talisman, I get confused a little bit. But I believe it's The Talisman and The Black House for the Stephen King and Peter Straub books. I'm excited to get to those, but I am landing at a 3-star for Ghost Story. Not the last in this challenge, but the last one I got to just recently was The Elementals by Michael McDowell. I have read from Michael McDowell before. I read Katie, which is not a very well-known book. I feel like I never hear anybody talk about it. I buddy read it with some friends and I had such a good time. It was like an old Victorian almost style slasher with like a creepy kid. Such a good time. Definitely check it out. That I was really excited to get into The Elementals. This one's been on my TBR for so long, and honestly I just knew that it was a Southern Gothic story and it's, you know, horror. Besides that, I had no idea what I was getting into, so it was such a fun time, and I read it completely via audiobook and it still was just amazing and holds up as a true Southern horror that is just incredible. Why did I think that The Elementals was much longer than what it actually is? I have no idea. I've put this one off for way too long, that's for sure. It's been on my TBR for years at this point. When I thought of Michael McDowell, this is the book I thought about and that I wanted to read. And I have a friend who loves Michael McDowell, and she was like, you need to read more of his if you love horror. And I told her about it. She's like, yeah, it's a good one. And finally got to it. I have read Katie before by Michael McDowell. It was a really fun time, slasher, but like more like Victorian style-ish slasher. I recently read Victorian Psycho and it gave kind of the same vibes, but obviously different plot with like the characters. Anyways, we're here about The Elementals. On a split of land cut off by the Gulf, 3 Victorian summer houses stand against the encroaching sand. 2 of the houses at Beldam are still used. The 3rd house, filling with sand, is empty, except for the vicious horror which is shaping nightmares from the nothingness that hangs in the dank, fetid air. The McCraes and the Savages, 2 fine, mobile families, allied by marriage, have been coming to Beldam for years. This summer, with the terrible funeral behind them and a messy divorce coming up, even Luker McCrae and little India Down from New York are looking forward to being alone at Beldam. I hope I'm saying that correctly. But they won't be alone, for something there, something they don't like to think about, is thinking about them and about all the ways to make them die. This one was so creepy. I feel like with Michael McDowell, the atmosphere is just incredible, and you know, he really is the horror king of like Southern Gothic tales, is what I've been told, and now I fully trust it and believe it after reading this, because the way that things were described were incredible. And not really knowing, I feel like all of the book covers of this has a house, so I'm thinking like haunted house vibes, and it definitely is there, but there's so much more to it. It's like a ghost story, and it's with a southern setting, and there's the talk of like all of the sand that is almost, it almost makes you feel like suffocating because of all of the sand and the things that are described horror-wise, body horror-wise with sand. It just was incredible. I absolutely loved it. I will say there was definitely moments where I felt a little taken out of the story learning about these families. There definitely is like this like family drama aspect to it, and just kind of not the greatest characters, but still it makes for like a really interesting time to see what becomes of them, what happens to them, and there's not really much more to say. Like I said, I can't believe that this isn't longer than what it is, but with that amount of time that you have with the book, it really is just you getting to know the characters and then jumping straight into they are back at this estate that they own that has these 3 houses, and what is going on with this 3rd house that is creepy AF. It was an incredible time. I landed at 5 stars, and I definitely want to pick up some more Michael McDowell, so please leave me recs. And the last author on this list was Victor LaValle, and I have read, I want to say a couple from Victor. I have, I think, more on my TBR for him than that I have read. But this past year, I did read The Devil in Silver. The cover that I got from my library was stunning, and it went perfectly with Stephen Graham Jones' newest, The Buffalo Hunter Hunter. Both of them having a buffalo on the cover was just, I love it so much. So yeah, I read this for a reading vlog that I did back in October for the Halloween-a-thon, and I had an okay time with this one. I definitely had mixed feelings on it, but definitely want to read more from Victor LaValle and loved like what he set out to do with this book. Guys, I am making my way through The Devil in Silver, and I'm kind of having a rough time. We are, in fact, in this, I'm halfway now. We are in this mental institution in Queens. We follow Pepper, who we have found out that he had some type of domestic altercation, and it led to these 3 men coming up and interfering, and then instead of like kind of calming down and backing away, the rage kind of hit him and he started hitting them, not knowing that they were cops that were just not dressed in uniform. So he was put on a 72-hour hold, which has now been extended, and he's having to stay here, and they're getting the inside view of this institution that is corrupt and treating their patients very poorly, doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, restraining them, getting a glimpse into the mind or the headspace of somebody who is having to be medicated, is forced to take this, and it's gives you the insight as to why they medicate them, to not only keep them calm for staff, but to also kind of, in a way, just kind of blur things for them because they would go mad being in this institution for this long, not being medicated. It's been really dark, really sad. I'm trying to like barrel through and not get like too depressy about it. So it's been a tougher one for me. And now I just feel like there's been such a long standstill of just like, it's going on and on and on. And don't get me wrong, I'm enjoying some of the characters. I really like Dory. She is this elderly lady there and she's just funny and witty. We're definitely getting to see the different sides of different patients, and they're all starting to act a little differently, like they're almost like being like cured almost. So that's kind of starting to intrigue me again, but also him being attacked by something in his room at night and not getting answers, and just again his stay being extended without his knowledge, and then them being like, will you sign this? And it's like, he says it's like just a horrible, like sprawled out signature that he's like, oh my gosh, I was obviously like on something when I signed that. Like, how is this okay? I feel like it touches on a lot of messages of how people in these conditions can be treated and how places like this can become too power heavy and turn more corrupt than good. I do want to make a really good dent in the rest of this tonight. I'm hoping to finish it tonight or tomorrow. I had about 40 pages left of The Devil in Silver. I knocked that out while I was there. I think this is a 3 for me. And I just want to clarify before I jump into this review that I don't think that this book was meant for me. I think that there's a lot of topics and a lot of meaningful things in this story that I appreciated, that I liked, but as a whole, the way it was written, the style it went into with the horror, it just wasn't for me. This definitely is a lot more literary fiction, the real life horror, which I typically like, but I feel like, I don't know, maybe diving more into like mental health and that type of ordeal and like playing so lightly around it and in a way that I wish was a little bit better in a sense, isn't for me. Maybe it's a trigger for me. I'm not sure, but I had a really hard time with this. I feel like if it wasn't for the other reads that I have going on with this one was so heavy that I feel like it could have thrown me into a slump, and definitely don't want that. It honestly is quite a beefy little thing to get through too, because there's so many parts. Like, I would get so invested again and be like, oh wow, this is interesting. And then it would just drag on and on and on. And I'd be like, okay, come on. You gotta do something different. You gotta jump back into like what I need. And then he would. And I'd be like, oh yeah, the last half of this is gonna be so good. And I would have like a good portion, and then it would just start dragging again. I'd be like, oh no. I wanted to love this a lot more than what I did. There was so many cool parts, and like the actual horror bits of this devil thing, of actions that like people would do in the story, different things like that. Insane. Like, his actual horror writing, I love, but I just felt like there wasn't enough of it in the story. Like, it was almost just like you got sections and then the rest were this ongoing repetitive storyline. And I don't know, I just lost a lot of interest, and I hate to say that. I will say the author's note was really good. It talked about how he wrote this in 2011, and him and his wife were both writing books at the same time with deadlines, and they had their first child. And God, I know how hard that is. I can't imagine like trying to write a book during that time, but they both, for every single day for months, they gave each other 2 hours a day to get out of the house and write. And so he talks about how this book is the chaotic beast that it is because he wrote the majority of this at like coffee shops or a Dunkin' Donuts and like stuff like that. And I love those touches when authors let us in on like the writing process and like what was going on at the time while they were writing it. I think that that's a really nice touch to have. He said they did not meet their deadlines, but they tried and they still got their writing time in. And I just love that. He also throws a little bit of shade to a certain hospital. I'd like to send a heartfelt fuck you to St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital Psychiatric Unit. No doubt they've long forgotten why I loathe them, but I will never forget. I also love when an author is not super, you know, transparent and like throwing it out there like what happened or whatever, or like maybe an aspect of their life that was horrifying for them or that they seen was horrifying for a loved one, and that they went through and then turned it into a horror book. It's none of my business. I just love that there's a nod to it there, saying like something has happened, and that's obviously an aspect that inspired some of the horrors, the real life horrors throughout this, and I love that aspect. For Gina's challenges, she adds the bonus prompt of just read another story from any of these authors. And going through this list, there is definitely some that I only got to one of their stories for the year, but I read more than one Stephen King. I always read a bunch of Stephen King. I finished out Edgar Allan Poe's work, so I definitely read more than one there. I read more Junji Ito than just the one. So I feel like I could throw any of those in that prompt to wrap this up. And before I leave you guys, I have to show you guys my journal spread. I know a promised journal flip through was said, but I just have not had the time to complete my journal. I still have like a few pages I have to complete. Honestly, this is the best that I've done with a journal in years, and it's going to be completely completed at some point. And then when it is, I will definitely try to sit down and do a flip through of it still. But I did have a spread for my 12 horror icons, and I'm so excited to finally have them all in place and their ratings, and I can't wait to make the spread for the women in horror in my new journal. There's so many 4 and 5 stars here that this challenge was definitely a success and definitely a good time for me. I sadly, like I said, had to finish it out the beginning of this year. So shout out to Gina for the fun challenge, and I'm so excited to read from some women in horror and hopefully take you guys along with that for my year. Let me know if you've read from any of these 12 horror icons. I would love to know. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.